Hello and welcome. This is my wife Mary, and I'm Ed, and we're Branch Davidian Seventh-day Adventists. We're excited that you've been able to join us today. Each week we're presenting or expounding on a principle or a belief related to the SDA Sabbath School quarterly lesson. We do not actually cover the lesson, as there's lots of other YouTube videos that do a great job of that, but we offer a different perspective on the topic covered by the lesson. This week we're going to cover Lesson 2 of the second quarter of 2018 by looking at the 144,000. Our key point is to show you in Scripture and inspiration the sealing of the 144,000 from the SDA Church occurs before the close of probation. We see in Revelation 14:13 the 144,000 are going to learn a new song. Why would they learn a new song if they're not going to sing it to the world? This week, in the back of your mind, consider this question: who is going to teach the 144,000 this new song? The quarterly lesson this week focused on the book of Daniel, mainly Daniel 2 through 4 and 6. We started last week in Daniel 2 with the stone that was cut out of a mountain without hands and broke the statue in pieces, then grew to become a great mountain that filled the whole earth. So Mary, as we covered the kingdom on earth last week, let's take a closer look at the 144,000, the stone, and the mountain. First, let's identify what is the meaning of the mountain.
Okay, so first we have to see what the mountain is. We're going to go to Daniel chapter 9, verse 16 and see what Daniel says a mountain is. O Lord, according to all thy righteousness, I beseech thee, let thine anger and thy fury be turned away from thy city Jerusalem, thy holy mountain, because for our sins and for the iniquities of our fathers, Jerusalem and thy people are become a reproach to all that are about us. So the mountain represents the people of Jerusalem. Again, in verse 20, chapter 9 of Daniel says, And while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God for the holy mountain of my God. You see that here he's praying for the holy mountain of God, which is Daniel's people Israel. And so a mountain represents the church, the people of God. We can see this also in Isaiah 2, verses 2 to 3, and Micah 4, 1 through 6. Now, Jeremiah tells us something interesting about these people. These people break in pieces the nations, which is just what the stone does in Daniel 2. Let's read Jeremiah 51, verses 19 through 20. The portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance. The Lord of hosts is his name. Thou art my battle axe and weapons of war, for with thee I will break in pieces the nations, and with thee I will destroy kingdoms. So here you can see that this portion of Jacob, Israel, is God's battle axe that will break in pieces the nations and destroy kingdoms. That's exactly what the stone of Daniel 2 does.
So we can summarize that the mountain represents God's people, the SDA Church. So now, who is the 144,000?
Ellen White told us that the 144,000, the elect, will in a short time know without question who we are. Okay? She said it is not his will that they should get into controversy over questions which will not help them spiritually, such as who is to compose the 144,000. She said this because at the time it wasn't present truth. But she doesn't say that we don't ever need to know this, because look at this next sentence. Those who are the elect of God will in a short time know without question. So she's saying the elect of God will know in a short time without question. So this is a very important topic. The 144,000 we noticed in Jeremiah 51, 19 through 20 is a portion of Jacob or Israel. It's a remnant. It's a small piece of something larger, like the stone is a remnant of the mountain, okay? And they are SDAs from the 12 tribes of Israel. The 144,000, also to identify them, they have no need of an intercessor because they are without sin. Great Controversy, page 648 and 649 tells us this from the 1911 version. They sing a new song before the throne. These are they which came out of the great tribulation. They have passed through the time of trouble, such never was since there was a nation. They have endured the anguish of the time of Jacob's trouble. They have stood without an intercessor through the final outpouring of God's judgments. Why were they so specially singled out? Because they had to stand with a wonderful truth right before the whole world and receive their opposition. And while receiving this opposition, they were to remember that they were the sons and daughters of God, that they must have Christ formed within them, the hope of glory. So this is a sinless kingdom.
All right, well, that's fantastic. So we can see that the 144,000 are those who are purified, sealed, and can learn the new song. So they're prepared to carry out God's work. So we could ask the question, how many are there? People are constantly, is it a literal number or is it a symbolic number? So how many are there?
Well, actually, Ellen White tells us in her first vision, the living saints, 144,000 in number, knew and understood the voice, while the wicked thought it was thunder and an earthquake. So Ellen White, in her vision, she saw the number. John, in his vision, in Revelation, he hears the number. Here's a little statement by Uriah Smith that I think really helps to clarify the situation. Uriah Smith says the following: the number 144,000 must mean a definite number composed of just so many individuals. It cannot stand for a larger but indefinite number, for in verse 9, another company is introduced which is indefinite in its proportions. Hence is spoken of as a great multitude which no man could number. If the 144,000 were designed to represent such an indefinite number, then John would have said in verse 4, and there were sealed a great multitude which no man could number out of all the tribes of the children of Israel. But instead of this, he says 144,000, 12,000 from each tribe, a number which can be easily enumerated. And of course, he's talking about the sealing in Revelation 7. So if the 144,000 were meant to represent an unnumbered, innumerable company, it would have said so.
So that's clear. So it's a literal number. That's not many people, though.
Yeah, it's not a lot of people. But I want to tell you that don't give up hope. When I first heard this about the 144,000, I was extremely disheartened because I just thought, how could I ever be part of this number? It's so small. But we know that the 144,000, also in Revelation 14, is described as the first fruits. The first fruits, if there's the first, it implies a second. So there's the second fruits. So that's just the first gathering of Seventh-day Adventists. Then there'll be a second gathering of Seventh-day Adventists, also a second gathering of people from the church, and a gathering of people from the world. So there's much more after this, but you just need to know that the 144,000 is a special certain number of Seventh-day Adventists. But don't fret, more than that will be going into the kingdom.
That's a relief.
Yeah.
All right, so what is the seal?
Okay, well, let's go to Ellen White again. She says in her first vision, the 144,000 were all sealed and perfectly united, and on their foreheads was written God, New Jerusalem, and a glorious star containing Jesus' new name. Okay, we know that the seal of God is the Sabbath seal. So the 144,000 will be for sure sealed with the Sabbath. They will know it and they will understand it and keep it, okay? But this group understands and lives out even more, because this seal is a manifold seal. There's lots of aspects to it beyond the Sabbath. We have to be sealed also with the New Jerusalem, with the glorious star containing Jesus' new name. And we'll talk about that another time, but Ellen White said that the sealing of God is a settling into the truth both intellectually and spiritually. So the first step to be sealed is we need to understand what all the parts of the seal mean. What is the New Jerusalem? The New Jerusalem is the kingdom, I'll tell you right now. But then again, what is the glorious star? And what is Jesus' new name? And then how can we live out those aspects in our lives? So we want to be sealed. We also know that the seal of Ezekiel 9 is the same seal as John saw in Revelation 7. So Ezekiel 9 is also the seal of the 144,000. Of course, in Testimonies to Ministers, page 445. The sealing of the servants of God is the same that was shown to Ezekiel in vision. John had also been a witness to this most startling revelation. Ellen White says in Testimonies for the Church, page 266, and this is relating Ezekiel 9 and Revelation 7, the sealing of both. It's the same thing. Especially in the closing work for the church, in the sealing time of the 144,000 who are to stand without fault before the throne of God, they will feel most deeply the wrongs of God's professed people. This is forcibly set forth by the prophet's illustration of the last work under the figure of the men each having a slaughter weapon in his hand. One man among them was clothed with linen, with a writer's inkhorn by his side. And the Lord said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. So here she's quoting here she's quoting Ezekiel 9 and telling us that this is the sealing of the 144,000.
Okay, so the 144,000 are those that are purified for the work. They're horrified by the abominations of the church, and they're those who sigh and cry for the untruth that's being propagated. So when is the sealing?
When is the sealing? Well, Ellen White tells us it's before Sunday law. Okay, we're going to read Revelation chapter 7, verses 1 through 4, just to get a little background on this. After these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. Okay, so now Ellen White is going to identify for us one of the aspects of the 4 winds. Okay, so she says, The time is coming when we cannot sell at any price. The decree will soon go forth, prohibiting men to buy or sell of any man save him that has the mark of the beast. We came near having realized this in California a short time since. But this was only the threatening of the blowing of the 4 winds. As yet they are held by the 4 angels. We are just not ready. There is work yet to be done. And then the angels will be bidden to let go, that the 4 winds may blow upon the earth. That will be a decisive time for God's children, a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. Now is our opportunity to work. So she's saying the 4 winds are Sunday laws, and of course we're going to be sealed before the Sunday laws, before this time of tribulation comes upon us. Also, the 144,000 are sealed before the plagues and before the time of Jacob's trouble. Great Controversy says this, None but the 144,000 can learn that song, for it is the song of their experience, an experience such as no other company has ever had. They have passed through the time of Jacob's trouble, such never was since there was a nation, and they have endured the anguish of the time of Jacob's trouble. They have stood without an intercessor through the final outpouring of God's judgments. They have seen the earth wasted with famine and pestilence, the sun having power to scorch men with great heat, and they themselves have endured suffering, hunger, and thirst. And of course, this statement that she makes is a quote from Revelation 16:8 that tells us about the 4th plague. And the 4th angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given him to scorch men with fire.
Okay, so the 144,000 go through the plagues and the time of Jacob's trouble. How does this fit into the New World Order that you keep hearing everybody talk about?
Great question. Yes, the New World Order. This is so interesting. Okay, the statue of Daniel 2 shows the stone hitting the statue in the days of the toe kings, the days of the 10 toes of today. That's the Greco-Roman Western world. Notice the 10 toes do not adhere to one another. They're not united. Remember, they're made of iron and clay, and they don't adhere. Okay, so this is not a unified beast, not a unified kingdom at this time. The toe kings, as you know, corresponds to the leopard-like beast seen in Revelation 13. The 10 horns on this leopard-like beast represent civil powers, and they are crowned. The heads represent the Christian churches, and they are not in power. There's a separation of church and state that we have right now, not for much longer, but we do have it. Then in Revelation 17, we see introduced the scarlet-colored beast that's in the wilderness. The leopard-like beast comes out of the sea. The blasphemous woman first rides the heads of the Christian churches, and then she rides the beast, showing the combination of church and state. This beast is formed when the 2-horned beast of Revelation 13 becomes the image beast. Notice how this scarlet-colored beast has 10 new horns. Revelation 17:12 says, And then the horns which you sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. So these 10 kings don't have a kingdom as of yet. We know the beast of the kings of the leopard-like beast had crowns on their heads. They had kingdoms. These ones don't. And notice they are unified, unlike the 10 toes. Revelation 17:13 says, These horns have one mind, and they shall give their power and strength to the beast. They have one mind. They're unified as in the one world order. So the scarlet-colored beast represents the coming one world order. And then James White is going to help us with this a little bit too. He says, thoughts on Revelation, a word to the little flock, page 14. He says this: 13th chapter of Revelation and the first 5 verses of the 14th is one connected chain of past, present, and future events, down to the complete redemption of the 144,000. Then the 6th verse commences another chain of events which carry us down through the history of God's people in this mortal state. So he's saying that basically the part about the 144,000, the first 5 verses of Revelation 14, really should be put on the end of Revelation 13 because it's a continual sequence of events. And we know in Revelation 13 we end basically with the mark of the beast, threatening 666, these kind of things. The New World Order, the image beast, is about to become the scarlet colored beast. So this is the transformation, and it's at that point, before the New World Order, in the days of the Toe Kings, the Western civilization that we have right now, the United States in the time of the two-horned beast, okay, that's when the 144,000 will be purified.
Okay, so plainly revealed in Scripture with the divine guidance of the Spirit of prophecy, the 144,000 are gathered in as the closing work of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The next work of the 144,000 will be to sing the new song to the rest of the world. This is to build the kingdom on earth, concluding with the return of Christ, of course. Please join us each week as we'll continue to offer new and interesting insights for your Sabbath school studies.
Many blessings.
God bless.